Hi again, Tom. It's Andrew once again. As these are your final essays, I'm just going to jump straight in and correct them immediately. So the issues of educational systems. I would say here, issues surrounding education systems have grown in importance, since some people believe that traditional schooling has become outdated, and that it should transition to newer methods, plural. I agree with those who argue that alternative methods, plural, can be beneficial to children's development. However, it is important that the traditional systems are maintained. On the one hand, practical education systems can be more advantageous than the older style of education, as they encourage students to develop a variety of skills. So we've ended up with, because we've not included the plural here, we've carried an error forward. So practical education systems encourage students. We don't need this here. This comma is unnecessary. This is because students' involvement in group projects and experiments not only enhances their knowledge on the subject, or their subject knowledge, but also stimulates, plural again, or the S rather, their creativity. I would say their creativity, innovative abilities, or stimulates their creativity, innovation, interpersonal skills, as well as communication and teamwork. For example, a recent study by Harvard University has shown that students who were involved in more than 3 group projects throughout their studies outperformed by 55%, and I'd say this is getting a bit complicated. All of the information is correct, but it just needs rearranging slightly. So a recent study by Harvard University showed that students involved in more than 3 group projects during their studies outperformed those who participated in fewer than 2, or 2 or fewer, by 55% in an interview. So let me read that one more time just to make sure I've got it right. For example, a recent study by Harvard University showed that students who were involved in more than 3 group projects during their studies performed 55% better in an interview when compared with those who did 2 or fewer projects. There we go. Thus, this clearly shows that the adaptation of practical educational systems is more effective in developing children's abilities. On the other hand, I would say it remains important for educational institutions to maintain traditional teaching methods. This is because, take this away, this is because the older styles, or this is a little bit imprecise or informal, so maybe we should say how about the standard practices? This is because the standard practices provide fundamental knowledge and concepts. Hence, people will not be able... Let's try not to use these negative sentences. So we could say people are more likely to be unable to understand theory behind problems that they face. For instance, a study by MIT has shown that 95% of people who lack understanding of computer programming languages, let's say, were not able to encrypt data into code for their projects, or could not successfully 95% of people who lacked understanding in computer programming languages were unable to successfully encrypt data during their projects. Therefore, traditional education systems remain an essential, or you can't remain an essential role. You can maintain an essential role, or you can remain an essential part of. You can retain an essential role, actually. Traditional educational systems retain an essential role in the development of students' intellects. In conclusion, both new and older schooling systems have their own unique methods, and both play a crucial part in enhancing children's development, or actually here, we should use a semicolon, and then we remove this, so we semicolon, both systems should be implemented together across all educational institutions. Or I personally believe that both systems should be implemented together across all educational institutions. Here we go, let's read through this one as well. The three pie charts illustrate the proportion of council spending in 3 different towns in the UK, namely Yorkshire, Derbyshire and Lancashire in 2014. Great. I would actually talk about the fact that it's in, is it 6 different areas? I'm not quite sure, but maybe state the number of areas. The proportion of council spending in 6 different areas across 3 towns in the UK, namely Yorkshire, Derbyshire and Lancashire in 2014. I would say here that you need to say, out of all of the towns, or overall, Derbyshire spent the most on leisure with 35% of its budget, followed by Lancashire and Yorkshire with 30 and 25% respectively. Good. On the other hand, Yorkshire spent the most on education, representing approximately 30% of its budget, or of its total, or of its expenditure, while Derbyshire and Lancashire reached 25% and 28% respectively. I would say, so we're looking for synonyms for spent. So we could say expended, or paid out, maybe. Yorkshire also had the highest proportion of spending on community care with 20%, while the remaining two towns spent less. Derbyshire 15% and Lancashire 10%. All 3 regions spent approximately the same proportion on environment at between 5 and 10% of budget. For social services, Yorkshire had the highest percentage at 15%, followed by 10% for Lancashire and just 2% for Derbyshire. With regard, so this is a complicated one. Regards are greetings, polite greetings. Send my regards, kind regards. But if you want to say in regard to, you miss off the S and you have to use the preposition in. In regard to the others, amounts were similar across all 3 provinces, representing between 7 and 10% of total budget spending. Overall, education and leisure were the largest expenses in all 3 regions, while environment and social services consistently represented the lowest. Consistently. Good. You've come a long way. I found myself really able to read smoothly through your work and only offer occasional suggestions and corrections. I think you should be looking at least a 7 if you can implement the corrections that we've seen. I don't think that will be a problem for you at all. I think you should take a deep breath, relax, and think, I have got this. If you do still feel like you need more work, there are details of how to take on further work from us in this email. If I don't speak to you soon, Tom, good luck in the exam. All the best. Bye bye now.